Welcome to Divine Feminine Rising with Nez Delene. I'm Nez Delene, and my intention with this podcast is to entertain, educate, and illuminate as I share the power and magic of the Divine Feminine. Thank you so much for being here. I'm grateful for your time and attention. Hello, my loves. I am currently reading, or actually listening to, The Book of Longing by Sue Monk Kidd. And I wanted to tell you just a bit about it because I think it's magnificent. It's the fictional story of Anna, the wife of Jesus Christ, and she is a woman who is on a very strong spiritual path. She believes strongly that she's not supposed to have children, and she feels that she's being called and has a strong longing inside of her. And it's a beautiful story, absolutely beautifully written, and it just transports me back 2,000 years ago because she's done a lot of research, obviously. And Anna's aunt is named Yaltha, and she's a wise woman. So these are two divinely feminine women that are the strong characters of the book. And one of the things Anna does is she learned how to read and write, which is unusual for women of that time. And she writes the stories of women in the Bible. And she writes them so beautifully. So the reason I wanted to talk about that was because one of the things that stood out for me so far was the story of Osiris and Isis was brought up, and then Yaltha gave Anna her take on that story. And I thought that her explanation of what it means, how we can apply it in our lives, would be helpful to some of you. And I thought I would read the story of Osiris and Isis first, in case you haven't heard it. It's Egyptian mythology. And then explain what Yaltha had to say about it. A long time ago, the god Osiris came to Egypt to rule as king. He brought the Egyptian people new laws and taught them how to farm well and live peacefully in their villages. Osiris was a very wise and powerful king and was loved and respected by the Egyptian people. Unfortunately, his brother Seth was very jealous of his brother's power in Egypt and began to form a plan to kill Osiris and take over his throne. Seth tiptoed into Osiris's bedroom. Careful not to wake up Osiris or his queen, the goddess Isis, Seth measured Osiris's body from top to bottom and from side to side. The next morning, Seth took the measurements to a carpenter who made a beautiful wooden chest decorated with bright paint and sheets of gold. That night, Seth threw a huge party and invited Osiris as the guest of honor. The night was spent feasting, singing, dancing, and playing games. For the final game, Seth brought out the huge wooden chest. He announced that the first person to fit perfectly into the chest would be allowed to keep it. One by one, each of Seth's friends climbed into the chest. Unsurprisingly, no one was able to fit into the chest, which was made perfectly for Osiris. Finally, Seth and his friends convinced Osiris to try his luck. Osiris stepped into the chest and lay down. The chest fit him perfectly, just as Seth had planned. Just as Osiris lay down, Seth slammed the lid and sealed it shut. Seth and his friends took the chest down to the Nile River and dumped it in, knowing that Osiris would never be able to survive. When Isis heard the news of her husband's death, she was extremely upset. She rushed to the riverbank and after several days of searching, found the wooden chest. Isis opened it and removed the dead body of her beloved Osiris. Crying, Isis hid Osiris's body in the river grass. She didn't want Seth to find his corpse before she could perform the proper rituals that would allow him to pass into the afterlife. Late that night, Seth returned to the Nile to make sure Osiris's body had washed away. The chest was nowhere to be found, but after searching the riverbank grass, he found the body of his late brother. Furious, Seth cut Osiris's body into 14 pieces. To make sure the body was never found again, he hurled the pieces all over Egypt. The next morning, Isis returned to the river with her sister Nephthys and her friends to perform the necessary rituals, only to find Osiris's body gone. Isis transformed into a huge bird and flew high over Egypt. Using her sharp vision, she was able to find all the pieces of the body to put Osiris back together. With the help of Nephthys, Thoth, and Anubis, Isis performed a great act of magic. Very carefully, they began to sew Osiris's body back together. They worked together night after night. When the body was whole once again, they wrapped it head to toe in strips of linen, creating a mummy. On the night of the full moon, Isis used powerful magic to bring her husband back to life. Osiris embraced Isis and thanked her sister and her friends. He told them he would not be able to stay in the world of the living. He explained that having died, he needed to travel to the world of the dead, where he would become the king of the afterlife. Before he left, Osiris told Isis not to worry. He told her that she would soon give birth to a son, Horus, who would defeat Seth and become a great protector of the Egyptian people. By taking back the throne from Seth, Horus would restore order and peace to the universe. So that's the gist, the main aspects of the story of Osiris and Isis. Isis was obviously a divinely feminine goddess, and she was revered for a long time through the history of Egypt. And in fact, Cleopatra was believed to be Isis in human form. So she had a lot of power, and she loved her husband so much that she used that power to bring him back to life. In the Book of Longing, Yaltha explains to Anna how the story of Osiris and Isis can be interpreted in a way that applies to our own lives, in a way that makes sense in our own lives. Application of that story to our daily lives is that when our life is broken into pieces, we can choose which one of those pieces to pick up and bring back into our lives in order to create a new life, to go forward in a way that we choose. I really loved that interpretation of how she said that, of picking up the pieces that we choose to keep and to carry forward. For me, when I went through my last divorce about 14 years ago, I felt like my life had been shattered into pieces, like a mirror being shattered. And I lost my home, I lost my income, I lost my husband, and I also felt like I lost my belief system for a while. And so it was truly like my life was shattered into just a gazillion little pieces. And at that time, I remember thinking, I can choose which pieces to restore, which pieces to pick up, and to recreate my life with in the way that I want my life to be. And to be honest, my life is better than it's ever been. I'm happier than I've ever been. I'm more fulfilled. I feel like I'm doing what I'm called to do. And there's just so much to it that is amazing. So that's what I would like to leave you with, is that thought of how when we go through something that is absolutely shattering and feels destructive, it's not the end. It's just the beginning. It's the beginning of something new. Another way of looking at it is the phoenix rising out of the ashes. So for me, I saw my life as shattered pieces of a mirror, and I would look and see which pieces I wanted to pick back up. But for some people, their life feels like ashes, like it's just burned up. And either way, we are rising anew, rising out of that old way of being and recreating our lives into a new way of being. And if we do that with love, focus on the love, just be as loving as possible, especially to yourself. Love yourself enough to build a new life based on loving yourself. You can look around after a life-shattering event and see who belongs in your life, who still belongs in your life, who would it be better to walk away from, to let go of? What belongs in your life? What would be better to let go of or keep? It could be a job. It could be a lifestyle. It could even be where you live. Now is a time that you can make decisions based on what you want. What's your heart's desire? What do you want to do in the world? Choose what makes you feel good. Choose what brings you joy. Choose what fills your heart and fills your soul. Let go of things that cause you to feel shame or to feel sad or bad about yourself, and let go of people that are toxic. This is a time to decide what you need and to make your needs a priority. This is a time that is all about you, this time of recreation, of manifesting a new way of life. It's about you and about what you need and not about anybody else. And as you foster your own needs and love yourself, you are setting a wonderful example for family and friends and even strangers. I have watched some people take a record of transitions on Facebook and how vulnerable they can be and how brave they can be to share their process of recreation, their pain and their glory. And I always feel honored when someone is willing to go deep and to share that process with the world, really, because on Facebook, pretty much anybody can see, even if you try and make things private, anybody can see it. And I think that when people do that, when they make that process public, then they feel like they are held accountable to following through on taking care of themselves, on doing what brings them joy, on filling their own needs, filling their own cup, for instance, and doing that first before filling other people's cups from theirs, right? So when your world falls apart, when your life seems to fall into pieces, it can be very tragic. It can be so very, very painful. But if you step out of it, step away, go to the eagle view, fly above, and look at the whole picture, and you can see that it's also a time of great opportunity for you to build a new life based on love, forgiveness, the light, the joy, things that you want to keep. It's like, if it doesn't make you happy, leave that piece on the ground, right? Happiness comes from within. Remember that. Happiness comes from within, not from without. I hope that something I've said might bring you some kind of spark of inspiration. And I just want you to know that I'm here for you and I love you. Thank you for joining me today. My mission is to help bring back the balance of the divine feminine to spirituality. Please share my podcast with anyone who might be interested in the divine feminine and personal empowerment. And if you'd like to connect with me further, feel free to reach out. You can find me at nezdelene.com, Divine Feminine Rising with nezdelene.com, Nez Delene Bliss, or Nez Delene on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. And also, please join my mailing list if you'd like to receive my newsletter. Allow the light of your love to shine. Be the change. Lead the way. And always remember, your light of love is a needed gift to the world that only you can give. Music on the show is by the wonderful Desert Wind, my favorite multicultural group known for their peace concerts.